Upstream, downstream, linkage, environmental service, payment for ecosystem service, and equitable benefit sharing. सूर्य तराई कन्टेक्समा चाहिँ हेरौँ है त. Environmental service, benefit that ecosystem provide to human and the environment, clean water, carbon sequestration, biodiversity conservation, soil fertility and flood regulation, and चुरे रिजनमा चाहिँ अपस्ट्रिममा डेन्स फरेस्ट एक्ट एज कार्बन सिङ्क्स and mitigating climate change and regulate water flow, reducing flood intensity downstreams during monsoon. And अर्को के त maintain soil health, biodiversity and crucial for ecosystem stability. तराई रिजन डाउनस्ट्रिममा चाहिँ benefit from upstream services and steady supply of clean water, fertile soil and regulated water flow, essential for agriculture, settlement and ecological balance, and payment for environmental service, mechanism where beneficiaries of ecosystem service provide financial or non-financial incentives to those conserving ecosystems. Purpose: promote sustainable practice and protect upstream ecosystem. Upstream payment for ecosystem service चुरेको चाहिँ local communities of or forest management group receive payment from downstream beneficiaries, e.g. agriculture, hydropower and industries. Incentive: forest conservation and sustain ecosystem services. Downstream payment for ecosystem service मा चाहिँ downstream communities contribute to upstream conservation through funding afforestation project and supporting sustainable forest management. Voluntary participation in conservation program. Key component of PES is voluntary transaction, well-defined ecosystem service, at least one buyer of services and at least one provider of services, and a clean and promise service delivery. And payment for ecosystem service principles चाहिँ voluntary participation, beneficiary pay, direct payment, additionalities, conditionalities. Okay, 10 step in designing and implementing payment for ecosystem service is के त envision desired outcomes and scope the whole systems, stakeholder consultation and quantify ecosystem service, evaluate opportunity and risk, convince stakeholder, negotiate agreement, initiates payment for ecosystem service program and monitor performance and improve program based on feedback. Example in Nepal, payment for ecosystem service program in Kulekhani watershed is equitable benefit sharing, ensure fair compensation for upstream and downstream stakeholders, especially local communities and indigenous groups. And key strategy चाहिँ inclusive decision makings and engage local communities, indigenous groups and stakeholders in planning and management, incorporate traditional knowledge in policy and strategy, fair distribution of payment for ecosystem service, and ensure upstream community receive a reasonable share of financial incentives, prevent exploitation or marginalization, sustainable livelihood opportunities beyond payment, create income generating activities compatible with conservation and ecotourism, sustainable agriculture, non-timber forest product, and summary चाहिँ चुरे तराई लिङ्क आर भाइटल फर वाटर सेक्युरिटी, फ्लड रेगुलेसन, सोइल फर्टिलिटी एन्ड बायोडाइभर्सिटी। धेरै तरिकाले and payment for ecosystem service mechanism provide upstream conservation while compensating communities fairly, and equitable benefit sharing ensure sustainability and community participation, recognizing ecosystem service and fostering cooperation between upstream and downstream regions lead to balanced sustainable development, and coordination and integration of agriculture, forest, livestock and water resources in integrated sub-watershed management plan aim to historically manage natural resources and support sustainable development at a local by coordinating agriculture, forestry, livestock and water intervention, and multi-stakeholder involvement चाहिँ engage all relevant stakeholders, local communities and farmers, forest, livestock owners, water managers, NGOs, government agencies. Platform for collaboration ensures diverse perspectives, expertise and interest are considered, and participatory approach include local communities and beneficiaries in planning and decision making, and ensure intervention align with local need, performance preference and traditional knowledge, increase ownership and success of the plan, and comprehensive assessment analyze the sub-watershed ecological, social and economic dynamic, identify key issues, challenge and opportunity in agriculture, forestry, livestock and water resources. Integrated planning develop a comprehensive plan that integrate all intervention, and strategy should complement each other and avoid conflict or redundancy. Sustainable land use management promote agroforestry, soil conservation and water management, and contour farming, tracing, buffer stripe aim reduce soil erosion and improve water quality, and watershed based approach manage water considering the entire hydrological cycle, implement measure to conserve water, recharge aquifer and manage runoff, and 7 crop livestock integration मा चाहिँ promote integrated farming system, use crop residue as fodder, use livestock measure organic fertilizer, enhance nutrient cycle and resource efficiency of agroforestry integration मा चाहिँ incorporate tree and shrubs into agriculture and pasture land, and benefit चाहिँ enhance biodiversity, improve soil fertility, increase carbon sequestration, provide additional incomes, and capacity building आयो conduct training and workshop for farmers, foresters and livestock keepers, empower communities for better implementation and ownership of intervention, and monitoring and evaluation मा चाहिँ establish robust monitoring systems to track progress, regular assessment, adaptive management, and necessary adjustment, and encourage adaptation of sustainable practice by financial support, access to market, and recognition for good stewardships. Policy सपोर्टमा चाहिँ advocate policy that support integrated sub management, collaborate with policy makers to ensure regulation align with sustainable resource goals and outcomes sustainable and resilient landscapes, improve livelihood and better environmental outcomes, and enhance coordination among stakeholders in agriculture, forestry, livestock, and water resources management. And बायोफिजिकल एस्पेक्टमा चाहिँ GIS एनालाइसिस, सैटेलाइट इमेज, टोपोग्राफी मैप, डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैप, लैंड रिजर्व मैपिंग, प्रोजेक्ट मैप, हाइड्रोलॉजिकल एनालाइसिस, फील्ड ऑब्जर्वेशन, ग्राउंड ट्रुथ सेकेंडरी, एंड लैंड यूज मैप चाहिँ स्लोप, लैंड यूज मैप, स्लोप मैप, इवैल्यूएशन मैप, एस्पेक्ट मैप, सोइल एंड जियोलॉजिकल मैप, river map, system map, and forest type, water resource, landslide, flood prone climate data. त्यसपछि मल्टी क्राइटेरिया एनालाइसिस चाहिँ वाटरसेड प्रब्लम्स, इस्यू प्रब्लम्स, केस एनालाइसिस, प्रपोज इज ल्यान्ड युज, वाटरसेड म्यानेजमेन्ट प्लान, एन्ड सोसियो इकोनोमिक एस्पेक्टमा चाहिँ डेमोग्राफी, इकोनोमी, डेमोग्राफी, इकोनोमी, एक्टिभिटीज, पेस्ट इंटरवेंशन, स्टेक होल्डर्स, इंस्टीट्यूशन कैपेसिटी, एग्जिस्टिंग प्लान, एंड फोकस ग्राउंड डिस्कस की इन्फर्मेंट फील्ड सर्वे, त्यसपछि गएर लिटरेचर रिव्यू, सेकेंडरी सोर्स, एंड input from community-based groups, network, civil society organization, input from local, district, province agencies, okay, and participatory approach in watershed management and decision making. A participatory approach involves activity engaging stakeholders at all level to collaboratively plan, implement, monitor, and evaluate watershed management activities. It value local knowledge inclusively and collectively decision making to ensure sustainable watershed development. And key element of participatory watershed management is stakeholder involvement. Identify and involve all relevant stakeholders, local communities, local owners and government agencies, NGO and businesses. त्यसपछि ensure diverse perspectives are included in planning and implementation, and information sharing facilitates exchange of data, knowledge, and exercise among stakeholders. Empower stakeholders to make informed decision and collaborative planning. Joint development of watershed management plan emphasize shared vision, common goals, and context specific solution. Capacity building, capacity building, and strength, skill, and knowledge of stakeholder for effective participation. Include training, workshops, and awareness programs, and conflict resolution, address conflicts and disagreement through open communication and consensus building, and encourage mutually acceptable solution. And bottom up average चाहिँ prioritize local knowledge, expertise, experience, and need. Local communities play a central role in problems identification and solution development, and adaptive management चाहिँ recognize watershed as dynamic ecosystems and adjust plan based on monitoring, learning and evaluation. Social equity and inclusive मा चाहिँ ensure fair distribution of benefit and cost and address need of vulnerable and marginalized groups and benefit of participatory watershed management को benefit चाहिँ increase ownership and commitment, stakeholder feeling and responsible for actions and enhance effectiveness, combine traditional knowledge with scientific expertise, reduce conflict, open dialogue, resolve potential dispute early and improve resource management, encourage stewardships and sustainable use, enhance resilient adaptive learning, improve ecosystem and community resilience and participatory monitoring and evaluation participatory monitoring and evaluation involves stakeholders, local community and beneficiaries in monitoring and evaluating watershed management activity to ensure effectiveness, accountability and sustainability. Key feature of payment for ecosystem service stakeholder engagement, local community activities participate in data collection, observation and assessment. Empowerment ensure local perspective, need and knowledge shapes decision making and adaptive learning continuous monitoring enable adjustment to improve outcomes and accountability and transparency community involvement increase trust and legitimacy in management practice and objective to ensure sustainable watershed management by integrating local knowledge, active participation and scientific monitoring. Outcome of participatory approach and payment for ecosystem. Okay, sustainable management of watershed resources, soil and forest, inclusive and equitable decision making and increase community ownerships and resilient, improve monitoring, evaluation and adaptive management and you can see decide who participatory monitoring and evaluation मा चाहिँ decide who participates चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो. अब establish goal, त्यहाँबाट develop indicator, त्यसपछि ग्यादर इन्फर्मेसन, एनालाइसिस रिजल्ट एन्ड सेयर रिजल्ट एन्ड टेक एक्सन हुन्छ. त्यसपछि गएर पार्टिसिपेटरी मोनिटरिङ एन्ड इभालुएसन इन वाटरसेड म्यानेजमेन्ट. के त पार्टिसिपेटरी मोनिटरिङ एन्ड इभालुएसन इज अ प्रोसेस वेयर स्टेक होल्डर, लोकल कम्युनिटी एन्ड बेनिफिसरिज are actively involved in monitoring and evaluating watershed management activities. It ensures that management is effective, accountable and responsive to local needs and step to apply payment participatory monitoring and evaluation in watershed management with stakeholder involvement. Engage all relevant stakeholders, local community, NGOs, government agencies and experts from the early planning stage. Clearly define role and responsibility in monitoring and evaluation. त्यसपछि गएपछि define objective and indicator, collaboratively set clear measurable objective for watershed management activities and define indicator to measure progress and success. Ensure indicators reflect local communities' concern and ecological priorities. Data collection and analysis involve community in collecting data, water quality, soil erosion, vegetation and socioeconomic aspect and combine local knowledge with scientific data for comprehensive understanding of watershed and capacity building, provide training and workshops for local participants, and focus on data collection, basics analysis and interpretation of finding, regular meeting and feedback चाहिँ hold regular meeting between project implementer and community members, discuss finding, share progress and gather feedback for improvement. And adaptive management चाहिँ use participatory monitoring and evaluation result to adopt watershed activity as needed, and maintain flexibility to response to changing condition and emerging challenges. Transparency and accountability चाहिँ sharing monitoring result openly with all stakeholders and foster a sense of ownership and accountability among participants. Learning and sharing and promote knowledge exchange among community and organization. Document and disseminate best practice and lesson learned for future improvement. And celebrate achievement चाहिँ recognized and celebrate success and milestones. Acknowledge community effort which motivate continuous participations. And benefits of participatory monitoring and evaluation in watershed management: enhance local ownership and responsibilities, improve project effectiveness by combining local and scientific knowledge, increase transparency and accountability, support adaptive management and problem solving, encourage knowledge sharing and replicate of best practice, motivate stakeholder through recognition of achievement. And summary चाहिँ participatory monitoring and evaluation empower local communities, integrated traditional knowledge with science, and ensure watershed management activity and sustainable, context specific and improve response to stakeholder need. Emerging problem of Chure watershed and strategy to mitigate degradation of Chure, Bhavar and Tarai. Background: The Chure Siwalik rise sharply from the plain along Nepal northern boundary, spanning 37 डिस्ट्रिक्ट र 13% अफ द कन्ट्री. इलिभेसन 120 देखि 2000 मिटर, सपोर्टिङ 60% अफ नेपाल पपुलेसन एलोङ विथ भाबर एन्ड तराई. Significantly crucial water resource for Tarai agriculture hub, ecological, social and economic and political importance. And landscapes चाहिँ weak geological structure, shallow soil and technologically unstable, steep slope, landslide, gully, boulder fill streams and spare vegetation, disperse settlement and agriculture field. And emerging problems of Chure watershed चाहिँ deforestation, excessive logging and land clearance for agriculture development. Consequences: biodiversity loss, soil erosion, disrupted hydrological cycle, soil erosion, removal of forest cover, heavy rainfall wash away topsoil, impact reduce agriculture productivity, river sedimentation and loss of biodiversity, habitat destruction, decline in plant and animal species, threaten ecological balance, water pollution, runoff from agricultural settlement and pesticide, fertilizer, chemical, impact aquatic life and human water supply, urbanization and infrastructure development, unplanned construction and poor waste management, environmental degradation, and climate change impact चाहिँ extreme event, flood, drought threaten ecosystem and livelihood changes the local communities depends on agriculture and natural resources, degradation and climate change, poverty and vulnerability, and strength strategy to mitigate watershed degradation, Chure Bhabar Tarai, reforestation and afforestation, large scale planning of native tree species, restore forest cover and support biodiversity, sustainable land management, contour plowing, tracing and agroforestry, promote organic farming and soil conservation practice, and तिनमा छ watershed protection and conservation, establish protected area and buffer zone around river and water source, educate community on watershed importance, soil and water conservation structure, build check dam, retention pond, erosion control structure, and reduce sediment runoff and conserve soil water, biodiversity conservation, create wildlife corridor to maintain ecosystem connectivity and genetic diversity, and community participation and awareness, involve communities in decision making, encourage sustainable natural resource management, conservation incentives, and provide financial or other incentive for reforestation and conservations, water quality management, control pollution from agriculture, in industry and domestic waste, and monitor water quality regulation, and climate change adaptation चाहिँ incorporate adaptive strategy into land and water management, resource monitoring चाहिँ regular resource to assess strategy effectiveness and adopt strategies based on new finding, government policies and regulation, enforce environmental law to promote sustainable land use, forest and water conservation, cross border cross cooperation चाहिँ collaborate internationally for transboundary watershed management, and unplanned road construction in sensitive fragile soil area and environmental impact, soil erosion disturb soil structure and increase erosion and landslide, river sedimentation, habitat destruction चाहिँ loss of forest, woodland and grasses, threat endemic and endangered species, disruption of wild corridor, and road act as barrier and hinder species movement and genetic exchange, water flow alteration and change in river stream flow and flooding or water scarcity downstream, pollution and contamination, sediment construction debris, chemical soil and water pollution, runoff may carry fertilizers and pesticide, threat to endangered species, the enhance encouragement on protected areas, risk to tigers and elephant and rhinos, cultural and social impact, disruption of culturally significant site and local livelihood, and landslide and geohazard, and destabilized slopes and increased landslide and slope failure risk, and mitigation measures चाहिँ promote proper planning and environmental impact assessment, stakeholder involvement in planning and monitoring, strike enforcement of environmental regulation to minimize ecological damage. Summary: the Chure, Bhabar and Tarai regions are critical for Nepal ecology, water supply and agriculture. Engineering problems include deforestation, soil erosion, biodiversity loss, water pollution, and climate impact mitigation strategy reformation, sustainable and land use, watershed conservation, biodiversity and protection, community community participation, policy enforcement, and careful infrastructure planning. Unplanned road चाहिँ in fragile areas exaggerate exacerbate erosion and habitat loss, water flow disruption, and geohazard. And 19मा theory and practice of agroforestry in Nepal. Agroforestry, the practice of raising tree and agriculture crop together on the same land in an integrated system. Combine agriculture plus forestry to sustain rural livelihood, conserve biodiversity, and promote environmental sustainability. Agroforestry system in Nepal, Togia system. Okay, Togia systems simultaneously cultivation of food crop and fast growing tree species. Tree mature land is returned to forest department, and common species like teak, eucalyptus, sisong spacing 2 into 4, and togiama 2 into 4 spacing, and yield 3 to 4 times better than area without intercropping. Home garden चाहिँ locate around household in rural areas, mix of fruit, vegetables, medicinal plant, and fodder crops. Benefit चाहिँ diversify food and income, biodiversity conservation, agri silviculture system चाहिँ combination of agriculture and silviculture. Example, intercropping cereal with fruit and fodder trees, community forest, and managed by local communities, combine timber and non-timber forest product with agriculture. Shifting cultivation slash and burn Sweden. ओके, शिफ्टिङ कल्टिभेसनलाई स्ल्यास एन्ड बर्न पनि भन्छ, स्विडेन पनि भन्छ. ल्यान्ड क्लियर बाई कटिङ एन्ड बर्निङ भेजिटेसन. As provide short term soil fertility. After fertility decline, new land is clear and cycle repeated. And benefit of agroforestry, beside conservation, provide diverse habitat for plant, animal, microorganisms, soil conservation. Tree prevent soil erosion and degradation. Income diversification. Multiple product, fruit, timber, fodder, medicinal plant, diversified income. And climate change, climate mitigation. Trees sequester carbon, reducing greenhouse gas emission, improve resilience. Farming system become more resilient to drought, flood, and climate shock. Challenge of agroforestry चाहिँ land tenure, lack of awareness. Land tenure, ambiguous land right hinder agroforestry adaptation. Lack of awareness चाहिँ farmer may lack knowledge of agroforestry benefit and practice. Market चाहिँ limited access to market for agroforestry product, and policy and institutional constraint. And inadequate policy and institutional support, slow expansion, and promotion and initiatives चाहिँ government support, policy and program to promote agroforestry practice, NGO international intervention, uh, technical support and awareness campaign by NGO, resource extension service, agriculture institutes provide training, resource and dissemination of knowledge. त्यसपछि criteria and indicator for selecting agroforestry species in Nepal. Selection depends on ecological zone, climate, soil, and socioeconomic factor. Key criteria: ecologically sustainable, ecologically suitability, adaptation to temperature, rainfall, altitude, soil of the regions, economic value, potential for timber, fruit, fodder, and fuel wood, medicinal plant, and growth and productivity चाहिँ faster growing species with a high yield potential, soil and water conservation, and species that reduce erosion, improve soil fertility, and maintain hydrology, biodiversity contributions, and trees that support wildlife, pollinators, and ecosystem diversity, compatibility with crop and livestock, tree that coexist with crop and animal without compensation, competition, social and cultural acceptability, species aligned species aligned with local customs, perform and traditional use, and summary चाहिँ agroforestry in Nepal is a multi-benefit land use system integrated trees, crops, and livestock systems vary togia, home garden, agri silvicultures, community forest shifting cultivation, and benefit biodiversity, soil conservation, income diversification, climate change and climate mitigation and resilient, and challenge or land tenure awareness, market access, and policy constraint, and species selection in based on ecology, productivity, soil conservation, and biodiversity, economic value, and local acceptability. Criteria and indicator for selection agroforestry species in Nepal. Selecting suitable agroforestry species depend on the ecological zone, climate, soil, and socio-economic factor. The key criteria and indicator are climate adaptation, temperature tolerance. Species must withstand the temperature range of ecological zone. Rainfall requirement: match species to average annual rainfall. Drought resistance: select species that survive water scarcity in drought prone areas. And soil sustainability: soil type: choose species adapted in to predominant soil type, loam, clay, and sandy. Soil pH: consider species that grow well within the local soil pH. And ecological functionमा nitrogen fixing ability: include species that enrich soil fertility throughout nitrogen fixation. Erosion control: select deep rooted species to stabilize soil and prevent erosion. Wildlife habitat: choose species that provide food and shelter for local fauna. And productivity and end use: timber production: species with valuable timber and good growth rate. Fruit and nut production: species producing in a edible fruit, nut for income and nutrition. Medicinal value: species with medicinal properties for community benefit. And agroforestry agroforestry system compatibility: canopy structure: combine species with complementary mm, canopies for light efficiency. Root system: avoid aggressive root that compete with crop crop multi-strata compatibility. Species should coexist in multi-layered agroforestry systems, and local knowledge and community preference चाहिँ involve local community and farmers to incorporate traditional knowledge and species performance, pest and disease resistance चाहिँ select species less susceptible to common local pest and disease, invasive species risk चाहिँ avoid species with a history of invasiveness in the region, conservation and biodiversity. Prefer native and indigenous species to support biodiversity conservation, climate change resilient. Choose species resilient to change climate condition, including temperature rise and altered rainfall patterns. Importance note चाहिँ field trial are essential before finalizing species selection. Consult local agriculture experts and extension if offers for species suitability. Local context and condition are critical for successful agroforestry implementation, and agroforestry species by ecological zone of Nepal ready for लोकसेयर नोट. ओके, तराईमा चाहिँ के पाउँछ भन्दाखेरि सिरिस, बडहर, सिसौँ, खन्यु, बेरुलो. सिरिसले बडहरलाई सिरिस सिरिस र सिसौँले खयरको रुखमा बडहर लाएर बेरुलो उमारेछ. फाइकस सुबिन सिसा भने बेरुलो. हिलमा चाहिँ उत्तिसले किम्बुलाई कुटमेरोसँग लाउने हो भने इपिलिपिर र कोइरालो जाग्छ होइन, बहुनीय स्पिसिस. माउन्टेनमा चाहिँ माथि माउन्टेनमा चाहिँ बैंसले भोजपत्रले ओखर खाएर बैंस निकाल्दा लोड सल्लोले देवदारको ट्याक्स लायो. भोजपत्रले बैंसमा ओखर खाँदा लोड सल्लारले देवदारलाई ट्याक्स लगायो. माउन्टेनमा हुने स्पिसिसहरू. त्यसपछि इफेक्ट अफ गभर्मेन्ट अफ नेपाल इन राइनो कन्जर्भेसन, लिगल एन्ड पोलिसी मेजरमेन्ट. वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्सन एक्ट 2015 1957, फर्स्ट कन्जर्भेसन ल अफ नेपाल and enacted mainly to protect rhino conservation and its habitat. Constitution of Nepal 2015 clearly defined the role of federal, provincial and local governments. Federal, provincial and local governments meant in biodiversity conservation. National Park and Wildlife Conservation Act 2000 1973 provide strict protection declare rhino as a protected species and enforce heavily penalties for poaching and illegal trade. CITES Act 9 2073 restrict international illegal trade of rhino horns and body parts. Rhino listed in CITES Appendix 1 1975 मा. फरेस्ट पोलिसी 2075 and forest sector strategy emphasize in situ and ex situ conservation of threatened and endangered species including rhino. Buffer zone management regulation 2052 1996 declared buffer zone as additional habitat for rhino and ensure community participation. 16th periodic plan हेरौँ है त. Prioritize conservation of threatened and endangered species. Tarai Arc Landscapes Strategic Plan. 10-year Plan 2004, Implementation Plan 2006 and Revise Strategy and Action Plan 2015-25, focusing on mega fauna like rhino. प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रैटेजी 2022-2030, adopt species focus ecosystem embraces and zero tolerance to wildlife crime, and greater one horn rhinoceros conservation action plan implemented during 2006 देखि 2011 and revised 2017 देखि 2021 to maintain a के त viable rhino population. Wildlife relief guidelines चाहिँ provide compensation and relief for loss due to human rhino conflict. institutional measure चाहिँ Ministry of Forest and Environment MOFE overall policy formulation के त and coordination, Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation, direct management of rhino habitat and protected area, Department of Forest and Soil Conservation, support habitat and corridor management outside protected area, establish of Chitwan National Park के त establishment of Chitwan National Park 1973, first protected area declared mainly for rhino conservation, deployment of Nepali army since 1975 देखि strength anti-poaching patrol and surveillance, wildlife crime control bureau WCCB and district forest office control wildlife crime and illegal trade, community institution buffer zone communities, user groups and community based anti-poaching unit CBAPU, coordination with security agencies, Central Investigation Bureau CIB, Nepal Police, support from conservation partners WWF, NTNC, ZSL and other stakeholders for reach and conservation, regional and international cooperation, sound transboundary coordination with India, Asia rhino specialist groups, and major conservation activities implemented, declaration of rhino sanctuary 1960s, western Chitwan Valley and south of Rapti, Goida Gasti 1961, specialized rhino patrol unit with armed group and guard post, rhino translocation program reintroduction in Bardia, Suklafata and Kositapu, internal translocation with Chitwan National Park, and proposed rhino sanctuary in Kositapu Wildlife Reserve to expand rhino range and population habitat management, grassland implementation, wetland and water roles, management under Ministry of Forest and Environment, milestone program, regular rhino census conducted every 4 to 5 years to assess population trend, individual ID based monitoring and photo based and field identification system, invasive alien plant species and grassland mapping, and अर्को छ invasive species control and habitat mapping in Chitwan National Park, use of modern technology, real-time patrolling, drone, CCTV and spy camera, DNA profiling and barcoding of rhino horns for forensic investigation and trade control, awareness and conservation education, educational materials and campaign to gain local support to conflict victim, scholarships for children of victim human rhino conflict, zero poaching incentives चाहिँ celebrate multi-zero poaching years and 2011 देखि 2020 only 4 rhino poached during this period. International incentives hosting Asian Rhino Range Conference 2079 gift of two pair of rhino to China to promote regional access to conservation. Conclusion for answer through strong legal framework and effective institution, community partner participation, advanced technology and regional cooperation, Nepal has become a global success story in rhino conservation, achieving several zero poaching years. Forest sector contribution to GDP and measure to enhance it. The forest sector contribute to GDP in Nepal. Forest sector contribution to GDP चाहिँ forest good and services play crucial role in economic development, poverty reduction, employment generation, livelihood improvement, national GDP growth. In Nepal, forest sector contribute is not calculated separately. It is combined with agriculture under heading agriculture and forestry. Different national and international agencies have estimated varying contribution. Estimated contribution of forestry sector to GDP. National Planning Commission NPC 39.3 in 9th 5-year plan 1997 to 2002 and 34.9 in Tarai 5-year plan 2002 to 2007, FAO 2004 3.5 in 2002 2000 र 4.4 ड्युरिङ 1990 देखि 2000. डिपार्टमेन्ट अफ फरेस्ट रिसर्च एन्ड सर्वे 2008 ले DFRS 2008 ले चाहिँ टोटल फरेस्ट सेयर 27.55%, फरेस्ट गुडले चाहिँ 9.45 र फरेस्ट सर्भिसले चाहिँ 18.10%. एन्ड however this estimate is not officially acknowledged by CBS. Ministry of Finance 2018 एग्रिकल्चर एन्ड फरेस्ट्री टुगेदर कन्ट्रिब्युट 27.6% अफ नेसनल जिडिपी इन फिस्कल इयर 2017 र 18मा 27.6%. 16th पिरियडिक प्लान फरेस्ट्री कन्ट्रिब्युसन 3% अफ जिडिपी इन 2079-80. टार्गेट टु इन्क्रिज 5% बाई 2085 देखि 86 हैन. मेजर टु इन्हान्स फरेस्ट सेक्टर कन्ट्रिब्युसन टु जिडिपी चाहिँ मेजर सेक्टर के त एक्सपान्ड साइन्टिफिक सस्टेनेबल एन्ड इन्टेन्सिभ फरेस्ट म्यानेजमेन्ट, प्रमोट भ्यालु एडिसन थ्रु processing and export of forest product, develop and institutionalized payment for ecosystem services, promote ecotourism within and beyond protected area, encourage private sector involvement in forest-based industries, improve forest accounting systems, and increase total economic value of forest into GDP calculation, include forest sector value addition in national systems of account at group and class level, and include income generated by protected area under forest GDP, strength anti commercialization and enterprise development, enhance community forest based enterprise and green jobs. And conclusion चाहिँ although forest contributes significantly to Nepal economy, its real value is underestimated. through scientific management, value addition, improve accounting, and private sector engagement, the forest sector can sustain, sustainably enhance its contribution to national GDP as targeted by the 16th periodic plan. An example of sustainable mitigation in Nepal is human wildlife conflict बफर जोन प्रोग्राम इन चितवन नेसनल पार्क 30 to 50% of park revenue is shared with local communities, community development, livelihood improvement, conservation, reduce dependency of forest resources by local peoples, promote community participation and existence with wildlife, installation of electric fence around settlement and farmland, formation of community-based patrols, significant reduction in human rhino and human elephant conflict, improve local support for wildlife conservation, snow leopard conservation in Annapurna conservation area, implementation of livestock insurance schemes into compensate loss, construction of predators proof coral, predator predator proof coral to protect livestock at night, promotion of ecotourism and alternative livestock awareness program for local herder, results reduce retaliatory killing of snow leopard, improve tolerance and existence between communities and predators, and human elephant conflict mitigation in Japa and Kosi Top Wildlife Reserve, installation of solar power electric fence, use of early warning systems to all to alert communities and elephant movement, community coordination for rapid response result, minimize elephant intruction into farmland, reduce crop damage and human casualties, and conclusion चाहिँ के त the example demonstrate the community participation, benefit sharing and technology based intervention are effective tools for mitigating human wildlife conflict. And we can see forest encroachment in Nepal, case process problems and reform suggestion चाहिँ despite existing legal, organizational and human resources mechanism, forest land in Nepal is continuously used for settlement, development, infrastructure and security and social service. As a result, forest, one of Nepal's most valuable natural resources, are facing several encouragement. मौजुदा कानुनी सङ्गठनात्मक र जनशक्ति संरचना हुँदाहुँदै पनि विकास, बसोबास र सुरक्षाका नाममा वन क्षेत्रको अतिक्रमण बढ्ने क्रम छ है त। कज अफ फरेस्ट इन्क्रोचमेन्ट चाहिँ लिगल के अरे लार्ज स्केल माइग्रेसन फ्रम हिल टु तराई, पहाडबाट तराईको व्यापार बसाइसराई, व्यापक बसाइसरा, डिस्ट्रिब्युसन अफ फरेस्ट ल्यान्ड इन सुकुम्बासी, फ्री बोन्डेड लेबरर फ्लोड भिक्टिम्स, सुकुम्बासी मुक्त कमैया र बाढी पीडितको नाममा वन जग्गा वितरण, पोलिटिकल प्रोटेक्सन टु ल्यान्ड माफिया, ल्यान्ड माफिया एन्ड इन्क्रोचमेन्ट, भूमाफिया र अतिक्रमणकारीहरूलाई राजनीतिक संरक्षण र पपुलेसन ग्रोथ एन्ड पवर्टी, बढ्दो जनसङ्ख्या र गरिबी, इम्प्युरिटी एन्ड विक गभर्नेन्स, दण्डहीनता र सुशासनको अभाव, युज अफ फरेस्ट ल्यान्ड फर के त टेम्पल्स, schools and campus, drinking water, road and electrification, playground and lack of clear land use policy, स्पष्ट भू उपयोग नीतिको अभाव एन्ड पोलिटिकल इन्स्टेबिलिटी, राजनीतिक अस्थिरता, सोसियल एन्ड पोलिटिकल tense of buying and selling, encouragement land, political promise to legalize occupied land, land allocation by various commission and project use forest land, and process of forest encroachment, dying of cutting tree, रुख सुक्नाले वा काट्नाले, कल्टिभेसन एन्ड कन्स्ट्रक्सन अफ हट, खनजोत र साना घर टहरा निर्माण, कन्स्ट्रक्सन अफ रिलिजियस स्ट्रक्चर मठ मन्दिर पाठ पौवा, ग्रेजुअल इस्टाब्लिसमेन्ट अफ सोप लिडिङ टु मार्केट पसल हुँदै बजार विकास, गभर्मेन्ट युज फर स्कुल्स रोड एन्ड वाटर सप्लाई, इलेक्ट्रिफिकेसन, ग्रेजुअल सिफ्टिङ अफ boundary from private land to forest land, and problem in forest encouragement, marginal managerial problem, व्यवस्थापकीय समस्या, past government practice of registering forest land in enclosure name, other agency facilitating settlement in enclosed area, forest land distribution by Sukumbasi Commission, rehabilitation campaign, using enclosures as vote bank, इन्क्रोचलाई चाहिँ भोट ब्याङ्कको रूपमा प्रयोग गर्नु, गभर्मेन्ट सर्भिस रोड स्कुल्स पोलिसी पोलिस पोस्ट इन इन्करेज एरिया, कन्टिन्यू सोसियल लेजिमिटी मेसी अफ पास फरेस्ट ल्यान्ड रेजिस्ट्रेसन, इन्भल्भ अफ इलाइट इन लिगल ल्यान्ड ट्रान्जेक्सन्स, अर्गनाइजेसनल प्रब्लम चाहिँ no restricting of forest organization based on geography and area, political transition and organized encroachment group, shortage of armed forest guard, weak chain of command, weak chain of command, एकदम मिठो शब्द, weak chain of command, political interference in staff deployment, lack of training and capacity building, long-term posting of local staff in the same areas, administrative problems, unclear role and responsibility in law and policy, and burden of national problems shifted to district level, non-transparent performance evaluation, and several shortage of budget, manpower, vehicles, weapons, and poor infrastructure due to conflict damage, weak coordination among stakeholders, problematic provision of forest encroachment control strategy 2068, political consensus required, and removal only after 2 years, and legal problems saying law not aimed as per time, and incomplete and inconsistent legal document, poor legal knowledge among forest official, coordination between act, regulation, guidelines, and circulars, conflict between forest act, local governance law, and mining act, and suggestion for forest encouragement management चाहिँ human resource and organizational management, strength district and field office with resource restriction, forest organization based on geography, immediate fulfillment of armed forest guard positions, use of GIS and satellite monitoring, separate mechanism for forest product supply and distribution, and legal reform review and strictly enforce Forest Act 2076 and related law, fast-track legal procedures to reclaim encroached forest land, incentives and reward system for effective encroachment control, and चाहिँ policy reforms चाहिँ gives forest high national priority in periodic plan, establish natural forest encroachment elimination commission, update forest data and issue green land certificates, clear policy not to allocate forest land to Sukumbasi or others, use national ID system to blacklist encroachers from state benefit, penalize individual and institution support encouragement, and from benefit and penalize individual and institutions supporting encouragement, include forest conservation in political party manifesto, and effective implementation of forest encroachment control strategy 2068, forest area security plan 2077, and coordination and awareness है त coordination and awareness चाहिँ direct involves of local community and user group awareness campaign on benefit of forest conservation, promote alternative livelihood, organic farming, ecotourism, and TAP. Mandatory inclusion of women, indigenous and Dalit groups, strength community forest programs. Conclusion चाहिँ forest encroachment is a serious national issue in Nepal. Through legal reform, institutional strengthening, political commitment, and educate resources and community participation, sustainable forest conservation, and effective encouragement and control and achievable silviculture characteristic of दलवर्गीय सिसो. अब सिल्भिकल्चर क्यारेक्टर दलवर्गीय सिसोको टैक्सोनोमिक क्लासिफिकेसन सिसौँ जो सिसौँ छ नि सिसौँलाई कल्न भने सिरिसा छ नि सिसा त्यस तिनी सिरिसा बहिनी चाहिँ प्लान्ट किङडम प्लान्ट हो. अर्डर चाहिँ फाबासिया, तिनको चाहिँ फाबासिया भएको छ. फ्यामिली चाहिँ फाबासिया हो. सब फ्यामिली चाहिँ फ्याबोडिया रहेछ. जिनस डलबर्गिया, स्पिसिस डलबर्गिया सिसो, बोटानिकल नेम डलबर्गिया सिसो. ओकरेन्स एन्ड डिस्ट्रिब्युसन तिनको हेर्ने हो भने नेचुरली ओकरिङ एलुभियल आलुभियलमा पर्छ एडजोइनिङ रिभरतिर र कमनली एसोसिएटेड विथ एकासिया क्याटेचु. खयरसँग उनको तालमेल छ, आकाशसँग सिसाको अलि तालमेल छ. अप टु 1500 उनले चाहिँ ताल 1500 मिटर माथि मात्रै तिनको जान सक्छिन्. वाइडली डिस्ट्रिब्युटेड तराई इनर तराई एन्ड रिभर भ्यालीमा छ. सिल्भिकल्चर क्यारेक्टर तिनको सिरिसाको सिल्भिकल्चर क्यारेक्टर लार्ज एकदम ठुलो डेसिडियस छ. एटेन्डिङ अप टु 30 मिटर हाइट, खतरा 30 मिटरसम्म अल्किरहेछन् फेभरेबल कन्डिसनमा. बोल अपटन सिनोस होइन, बोल अपटन साइनोस, बोल चाहिँ बोल्दाखेरि साइनो मिलाएर बोल अपटन साइनोस. ग्रो बेस्ड इन बाउल्डरी एलुभियल सोइल. बाउल्डरी, अब तिनको त बाउ छैन, बाउ छन् बाउल्डरी जस्ता बाउल्डरी एलुभियलमा हुन्छन्. पर्फर्म ओइल वेयर वाटर टेबल इज विथिन एबाउट 8 मिटर होइन. पर्फर्म्स ओइल वेयर जहाँ चाहिँ वाटर टेबल 8 मिटरसम्म छ त्यहाँ चाहिँ राम्रो तरिकाले वेयर गर्छन्, स्पेसली तराईमा. ग्रो पोरली इन हेभी क्ले सोइल, एकदम हेभी क्ले सोइलमा चाहिँ एकदम पोरली हुन्छन्. त्यहाँबाट स्यालो ड्राई एन्ड इन्फर्टाइल सोइलमा एकदम पोरली. डज नट टोलरेट स्ट्याग्नेन्ट वाटर, स्ट्याग्नेन्ट वाटर चाहिँ उनले चाहिँ टोलरेट गर्न सक्दैनन्. र वाटरलग्ड चाहिँ कन्डिसनमा पनि उनी बस्न सक्दिनन्। स्ट्रङ लाइट डिमान्डर, लाइट त मलाई चाहिन्छ रातभरि, स्ट्रङ लाइट डिमान्डर हो। रुट सिस्टम चाहिँ लङ ट्याप, लामो छ उनको रुट सिस्टम। वाइडली स्प्रेडिङ सर्फिसियल ल्याटरल रुट हुन्छ। सिडलिङ सेन्सिटिभ्स टु विट एन्ड ग्रास कम्पिटिसन, मोडरेटली फरस्ट हार्डी होइन। फरस्ट चाहिँ हाडी, फरस्टमा चाहिँ हाडी तताउने हुन्थे नि। र फायर सेन्सिटिभ, आगोदेखि चाहिँ डराउने, स्पेसल्ली एट यङ तनेरीमा चाहिँ आगोसँग डराउँछिन्। यङ प्लान्ट हाइली सक्सेप्टेबल टु ब्राउजिङ, ब्राउ तिनको ब्राउज चाहिँ एकदम सक्सेप्टेबल हुन्छ योगमा। कपिस एन्ड पोलार्ड फ्रिली, कपिस पनि हुन्छ, पोलार्ड पनि हुन्छ फ्रिली। प्रड्युसिङ स्ट्रङ रुट सकर्स, तिनको रुट जराहरू चाहिँ रुट सकर दह्रो प्रड्युस हुन्छ। रुट नुडल्स प्रेजेन्ट, रुटमा नुडल, तिनको रुटमा नुडल चाउचाउ छ, रुट नुडल प्रेजेन्ट हुन्छ। क्यापेबल अफ नाइट्रोजन फिक्सिङ, नाइट्रोजन छ नि त्यो फिक्सिङ गर्छ। प्रोड्युस भेरी ड्युरेबल हार्डवुड, तिनको चाहिँ एकदम लामो हार्ड छ वुड प्रड्युस गर्छिन्। रिजिनेसन, नेचुरल रिजिनेसन, एबुन्डेन्ट सिड प्रडक्सन एभ्री इयर, प्रत्येक वर्ष दह्रो सिड दिन्छन् तिनले है सिसाले। र सिड प्रडक्सन पिरियड चाहिँ डेमा, दिनमा हो फेरि। त्यसपछि सिड मेनली डिस्पर्स बाई विन्ड, हावामा तिनी उड्ने रहेछन् तिनको सिड। नेचुरल रिजिनेसन कमन एलोङ रिभर ब्याङ्क एन्ड फ्लड प्लेन। र आर्टिफिसियल रिजिनेसन, पट सुड बी कलेक्टेड आफ्टर टर्निङ ब्राउन होइन, पट सुड बी कलेक्टेड आफ्टर टर्निङ ब्राउन एन्ड सिड कलेक्टेड फ्रम हेल्दी म्याच्योर ट्री। ओके, पट सुड बी पट चाहिँ आफ्टर टर्निङ ब्राउन भइसक्यो पट कलेक्सन गर्ने। र सिड चाहिँ हेल्दी र म्याच्योर ट्रीबाट गर्ने। रिजिनेसन मेथड चाहिँ स्टम्प प्लान्टिङ, तिनको स्टम्पलाई प्लान्टिङ गर्ने र मोस्ट कमनली युज हुन्छ। र डाइरेक्ट सिडलिङ हुन्छ, पोलिपटमा पनि हुन्छ। र लार्ज बार रुट ट्रान्सप्लान्ट पनि हुन्छ, हार्डवुड कटिङ पनि हुन्छ। नर्सरी एन्ड प्लान्टेसन प्र्याक्टिस चाहिँ स्टम्प प्लान्टिङ प्रिफर्ड ड्यु टु बेटर सर्भाइभलको लागि, ऱ्यापिड इस्टाब्लिसमेन्टको लागि। क्यान अल्सो बी रेज सक्सेसफुल्ली इन पोलिपट बेयर रुट नर्सरिज र रिक्वायर गुड विट कन्डिसनको लागि, प्रोटेक्सन फ्रम ग्रेजिङ एन्ड फायरको लागि। र पेस्ट एन्ड डिजिज है त, पेस्ट एन्ड डिजिज हेर्ने भने सिसोमा लाग्छ फ्युजारियम अक्जिस्पोरियम, विल्टो हुन्छ एकदम सुक्छ, उनी सुक्छिन् किन त फ्युजारियम अक्जिपोरम भएर सुक्छिन्। र रुटमा उनको जरामा रड छ भने चाहिँ रडमा गानो छ र लुसी छ, गानो डरमा लुसी। र रिपोर्टेड इन 10 year old प्लान्टेसन, 10 year old प्लान्टेसन कैलाली डिस्ट्रिक्ट। ओके, र लिफ डिफोलिएटर चाहिँ लिफ चाहिँ डिफोल्ड गर्छ, लाइक प्लेटमा रिफ्लेक्स गरे जस्तै, प्लेट अप्टेरा रिफ्लेक्सा है त। त्यसपछि युज टिम्बर बिल्डिङ एन्ड कन्स्ट्रक्सन, फर्निचर, कार्ट व्हेल्स, एग्रिकल्चर इम्प्लिमेन्ट, टुल ह्यान्डल्स। एक्सलेन्ट फ्युलवुड चाहिँ राम्रो हुन्छ। लिभ एन्ड यङ सुट्स प्रोभाइड भ्यालुएबल फर्दर इम्पोर्टेन्ट मल्टिपर्पोज एन्ड कमर्सियल ट्री स्पिसिज। डिमान्ड एन्ड सप्लाई अफ फरेस्ट प्रडक्ट इन नेपाल इज, फरेस्ट प्रडक्ट प्ले अ भाइटल रोल इन मिटिङ नेपाल energy, construction, livelihood and industrial need. The demand and supply of forest product are influenced by के ले असर गर्छ भन्दाखेरि पपुलेसन ग्रोथ, इकोनोमिक डेभलपमेन्ट, इकोनोमिक कन्डिसन एन्ड गभर्मेन्ट पोलिसी एन्ड म्यानेजमेन्ट रेजिम्स। एन्ड मेजर फरेस्ट प्रडक्ट डिमान्ड इन नेपाल चाहिँ टिम्बर, फ्युलवुड, एन्ट्यापी, other minor forest product, fodder, poles, fiber, resin. मेन सोर्स अफ सप्लाई चाहिँ कम्युनिटी कोलाबोरेटर लिज गोबर बफर प्राइभेट and outside forest non-cultivated included also contribute significantly, especially for fuelwood and timber. Nature of demand for forest product. demand of fuelwood Demand of fuelwood production is mostly demand fuelwood demand drive from household energy need. Timber demand drive from household building construction, furniture and industrial use. Timber demand depends number of house constructed annually, amount of timber on use for house furniture, price of timber and substitutes materials, इकोनोमिक ग्रोथ इन्क्रिज हुन्छ. त्यसपछि गएर इन्कम लेभल construction activity, furniture demand leading to higher timber demand, and policy and ecological influence. Demand and supply depends not only on biophysical factor of ecological regions, Tarai Hill Mountain, they are also strongly influenced by government policy, forest management regime, trade and transportation infrastructure, projection study on demand and supply. है त मिनिस्ट्री अफ फरेस्ट मिनिस्ट्री मास्टर प्लान फर द फरेस्ट्री सेक्टर 1988 the projected timber and fuelwood demand and supply for 25 years. Okay, but the plan period has already expired. A demand study by NFA submitted to Nepal Red Forest and Climate Change Cell estimated demand and supply of wood product. Demand function. Demand is equals to F, number of household, percent of household and using fuel wood per capital consumption, and demand and supply of fuel wood by region means fuel wood demand million tons 2011 मा तराईमा 5.30, हिलमा 4.40 र माउन्टेनमा 0.82. 2020 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 5.48, हिलमा 4.27 र पहाडमा 0.78 र 2030 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 5.62, हिलमा 4.05 र माउन्टेनमा 0.72. फ्युलवुड सप्लाई मिलियन पर टनमा 2011 मा तराईमा 2.58, हिलमा 5.44 र माउन्टेनमा 0.94. 2020 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 3.72, हिलमा 6.96 र माउन्टेनमा 1.13 र 2030 मा तराईमा 5.07, हिलमा 9.60 र माउन्टेनमा 1.51 मिलियन टन्स. एन्ड डिमान्ड एन्ड सप्लाई अफ टिम्बर बाई रिजन. टिम्बर 2011 मिलियन मिटर क्युब, तराईमा 1.46 मिलियन मिटर क्युब, हिमालमा 1.72 र पहाडमा 0.19. 2020 मा 1.67 र हिलमा 1.87 र माउन्टेनमा 0.21. अब 2030 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 2.28, हिलमा 2.23 र 2.33 र 0.25 माउन्टेनमा. र टिम्बर सप्लाई मिलियन मिटर क्युबमा चाहिँ तराईमा 1.15, हिलमा 1.81 र माउन्टेनमा 0.22. र त्यसै गरी 2020 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 1.53, हिलमा 1.32 र माउन्टेनमा 0.27. र 2030 मा चाहिँ तराईमा 2.13, हिलमा 3.20 र माउन्टेनमा 0.35. डिमान्ड सप्लाई सिनारियो एन्ड रिजनल इम्ब्यालेन्स चाहिँ persistent shortage of timber and fuel wood in Tarai, surplus in hill and mountain. Surplus of wood cannot be easily transported to Tarai due to डिफिकल्ट terrain and high transportation cost नेसनल सिनारियो चाहिँ डिफिसिट इन 2011देखि 15मा एन्ड अ डिक्रिजिङ रेट सरप्लस प्रोजेक्ट इन 2020, 25 एन्ड 30 ओभरअल वुड सप्लाई इन्क्रिज फ्रम 2011देखि 2030 एन्ड कन्क्लुजन चाहिँ नेपाल फेस अ रिजनल imbalance in forest products के त demand and supply forest product demand and supply while national supply expected to improve tarai will continue to face shortage unless transportation infrastructure improvement and scientific forest management is expanded and policy reform facilities and inter-regional wood movement and sustainable forest management is key to meeting future and best of luck in future demand रहेछ and best of luck our forest eco section 2 स्टार्ट हुन्छ योदेखि